Dr. Sobowale, you have chronicled the economy over the decades, perhaps the past 3 to 4 decades, and you remain fresh in your column and your offering. So, how would you assess the past 2 years?
What you are looking at in front of me is what will the total remains of what renew hope agenda. This is where it all started. The promises that were made during the campaign period and the performance now. Usually, in the past 38 years, when I'm assessing governments, I would generally like to start from what they promised us and what they delivered, what they are delivered up to that time. Yes, Tinubu inherited a lot of a big mess. He inherited a big mess, but it must be stated that he inherited a big mess from somebody he installed in office. So he was the architect of his own misfortune in many respects. Now, the first thing that shocked me when I collected my own copy of this renewable agenda, and I read it, you can see that almost every page has red mark or something. I read it thoroughly from what for. And somebody called me, the person who sent to me called me and said, "What do I think of it?" I said I can describe it in one word: hogwash. It is so full of many promises that could not possibly be redeemed. This was more or less a political document that somebody wanted to build an economic program upon. Cannot build sound economic program on what is essentially a political document. I became alarmed when I got to this page where he said our objective. He said we are standing on the foundation and placed by the current administration. He was standing on current foundation laid by the current administration, the current administration. The meaning of this is that I'm standing on the foundation laid by an idiot, a foundation that is crumbling under our feet and which could never work. So, more or less, my own summary, without going into details, because we'll still have a chance to talk later on, is this. He allowed too much politics contain this stuff to get in the way of sound economic program. He made promises that he could not fulfill. If you read it, this year 2025, Nigeria is supposed to be producing and exporting 2.06 million barrels per day of crude oil. But at the end of this month that just ended, April, we did only 1.4. Throughout this year, we have done, in fact, in his 2 years in office, there has not been any month we did up to 1.7. The average has been more like 1.5. And he promised us 2.06 today. I'd like to commiserate. And he's even talking about 4 million barrels by 2027. We will never get there. But it's not the cause, it's just the fact that it's unrealistic. And I also want to point out one thing, because I don't want to repeat a lot of what This was said. He made another cardinal mistake. He packed too many of the Lagos boys who helped him as governor into the federal government. Lagos is not Nigeria. Nigeria is not Lagos. A good commissioner in Lagos State might not be a good minister at the federal. At the federal level, you need people who have had some kind of experience for years at the federal level. You don't take people who are good commissioners in your state and make them federal ministers.
We have seen the arrival of two new security threats in the country, at least two that have been named, Lakurawa and Mahmuda. And you can see that Boko Haram is making a new resurgence. So, Dr. Sobowale, maybe you can give us your perspective on this matter and what do you think we should do?
I lived and worked in the north for 10 to 12 years. And as in addition to that, I was always in the north for almost another 15 years after that. So I know the area very well. Before Kebbi State was taken out of the Sokoto State, before Kebbi and Zamfara states were taken out of Sokoto State, I was in rice milling business, rice growing and milling in Sokoto. I had a rice mill in Sokoto, and just in pursuit of rice smugglers, we were able to identify nothing less than 27 illegal border entries into Sokoto State. 27.
How long ago was that?
Oh, that was 1990. And when I was in Borno State, before UOBA was exercised out of it, there were nothing less than 38 illegal entries into Nigeria from Borno State. So that gives you an idea of the kind of problem we have. That's Nigeria, like in fact, at the end of the day, by the time when I was National Sales Director for Boots, which was the most widely distributed group of OTC drugs in 1970s, I knew about nothing less than 800 border posts, illegal border posts in Nigeria, through which people could enter. So, and they enter and go out of Nigeria. So the security forces in Nigeria are already handicapped by the number of entries we have in and out of this country by everybody. Now, what started as Boko Haram issue has now morphed into many conflicts in Borno and Yobe State. There is ethnic violence. Kanuri versus Fulani, Kanuri versus Hausa. In Taraba State, where General Danjuma comes from, among the most prominent ethnic groups are the Juguns. And the Juguns are very, very highly protective of their territory. When General Danjuma was talking about protecting yourself, the people in Taraba, the Juguns in Taraba State were I remember the Ukari were already doing that. They've already armed themselves. The problem is that in arming themselves, they started taking the law into their own hands. Last weekend, when I got my copy of the Weekend Trust, 2 weeks ago, it showed instances of where people actually slaughtered cows. So that now, where the herdsmen started the violence first. Other people are now reacting and taking law into their own hands. In many areas of Plateau State, we have Benue State now. The Biroms in Plateau State are not waiting for the police or the army to defend them. They are going after the herdsmen. The people in Bokos are not waiting for the police. They are going after the herdsmen. The Idomas are not waiting for the police to protect them. They are going after the herdsmen. So all of a sudden we have a situation where it's not a simple matter of just curbing Boko Haram, Lakrawa, Iswa, and so on and so forth. We also have the issues of ethnic violence that is pervasive all over the place. Depending on which state you are in the north, might be the security situation that the police and the army are forced to quell are now more than just herdsmen and Boko Haram. It is inter-ethnic conflict going on at the same time. Some of my friends, some of my old friends who are still alive and who call me from time to time, paint a totally different picture than simple picture that we paint of what the security forces have to overcome. If you're in Pashin, your views of what is insecurity is different from that of the man in Agugu. You understand what I mean? So the truth of the matter is that our security forces are overwhelmed. They really don't know who to really defend against. Overnight, we read into these papers that now Boko Haram and Iswa are actually going and attacking army barracks. That has an implication. They really want to strip us of our defenders. When they demoralize the army and the police and the air force and so on and so forth, then the entire country become defenseless. That's my biggest issue. I was listening to what the IGP submitted. He has to be by the nature of his position, he has to be very careful and guarded in what he's saying. But he's actually telling us the truth we might not like to hear. And the truth is that equipping the security forces alone might not solve our problem. A situation where the governor of Borno State unilaterally pardoned 300,000 Boko Haram because he thought they were repentant. When he said that, I wrote an article saying that, look, Mr. Man, who gave you that right to determine who was repentant or not? These people, they have killed a lot of people. They have rendered a lot of people homeless. They have created widows. They have created orphans. They have devastated communities. And you literally take 300,000 of them and say they are repentant. You are forgiving them. How do you monitor their movements? And at that time, I predicted that, look, Mr. Governor, everybody is going to regret what you have done. Look at what is happening in Borno State now. My own view, what Governor Zuluma is to release more harmful people into the community than ever before and created more problems on the security forces of Nigeria. The whole thing is so complex that I think another a conference hall might need to be done just for security. Look, just for security. Look, if I am, if I happen to be in the army or the air force or in the police, if I'm not yet in Borno State, I'll be praying that they will not transfer me to Borno State because I don't need to go and die there. My first analysis of government budget, federal government budget, that I did for this paper was 1988.
1988.
And a few days ago, I was going through my archives and I brought out that 1988 analysis and I now do my analysis of the 225 budget by Tinubu. And it's remarkable how some of the complaints, the things I was saying in 1988, still apply today. You see, governments in Nigeria don't take budgets seriously. I'm sure he will agree with me. Look, from 1974 to 1990, when I was either the sales director, marketing manager, the chief revenue officer of a company, I learned very quickly that what you put in your revenue budget is a promise to the company, to the shareholders. If you look at the income statement, the first line is turnover, the revenue that's expected. So each time we look at this year's budget, and it said 54 trillion. You will know what I'm saying. I'm sure you should understand us. If the managing director of your company presents to the shareholders that what you are expecting this year turnover 54 trillion. If at the end of the year he's able to achieve only 40 trillion, he'll probably be out of office the next year. But if the shareholders are still lenient not to give him another chance, if by half year he promises another 54 trillion, and by half year they are still on 22 trillion, they will kick him out before the end of the 7 years. Because that 54 trillion is a promise. And before you make that promise, you must be sure that you can redeem it. Because so many things are going to depend on your saying, I can achieve 54 trillion revenue. And the minute you fail to achieve that revenue target, so many things are going to go out of whack in that company. And look, since 2013, when Dr. Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala first put in a budget 2 million barrels per day of crude oil. Every government has been using 2 million barrels per day, and not a single day in 13 years have we achieved that target. Why will we continue to use it? Look, if you're on the board of directors of the company, and the sales director says turnover will be 2 million per day. First year he fails, second year he fails. Why will you want to repeat the same thing for 13 years? I think that's the beginning. This nonsensical belief that Nigeria can produce and export 2 million barrels per day. We have not done it. We have never done it. So we start by acquiring our budget on something that is fantasy, pure fantasy. And there is no magic you can do with your fiscal policy and with your monetary policy when the basis of your budget is is not realistic. The base of our budget is 2 million barrels per day, which you are not being able to achieve for 13 years. Why do we stick to it? Why not sit down seriously and ask ourselves, what is the realistic volume of million barrels per day that we can achieve, and then base our budget on that. And if we are going to base and that will lead to some consequences. It will lead to downsizing the size of the federal government. Why do we need 48 ministers? No other country in the world has more than 25. Why does Nigeria need 48? One thing about realistic budgeting is that it disciplines, whether it's in private sector or public sector. Realistic good budgeting disciplines everybody. Okay, it's, look, to some extent, a government is the sum total of all the families in the economy. Can imagine if you and I are said heads of household, know that realistically we are going to earn 2 million, but we tell our children we are going to earn 5. Immediately we create problem for ourselves by making that declaration, because now everybody in the family will expect more out of that 5 million, and then you are straining to meet that 5 million budget. Then you are borrowing money. Then you are getting involved in corrupt practices and just to make it. I didn't read what this thing said, where we are supposed to be now. How many billions of dollars we are GDP is supposed to be today. To make us laugh, because where we are is about one quarter of what this budget said we should be. That shows that this is unrealistic. You cannot in the private sector promise the shareholder 600 billion and produce only one billion.